Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a recap and review of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial for week 6. Now this will cover days 20, 21, 22 and 23 for the period Monday the 23rd of May to Thursday the 26th of May 2022. Now you can check out my previous coverage of the previous weeks within the trial, and I'll leave some links within the description. Now, of course, this was the final week of the trial itself, which has gone on now for nearly 6 weeks. And overall, it saw a lot of action-packed, very interesting moments, a lot of comedic moments, and a lot of prolonged segments as well. So we'll get straight into it then and start off with the first day on Monday, which was day 20. And this was probably the day that was most frustrating to watch, as it was very long-winded, with lots of witness testimonies that didn't really amount to too much. So we started off with Richard Moore, who was an expert for orthopaedic hand surgery, and this was in the last bout of Amber Heard's witnesses, and this witness drew reference to Johnny's finger injury that he suffered in Australia after an argument with Amber. And once again we had some very graphic photos of the finger injury itself, and Richard was trying to prove that he felt that Johnny didn't suffer the cut from the bottle that was thrown at him. If you go back to the previous testimonies, it was established that the cut was caused when Amber threw a second vodka bottle at Johnny, but Richard was talking about where the cut was on Johnny's finger and how the trajectory of the bottle couldn't have caused the cut in the position that it did. We were also provided some x-ray photos where the break in the finger was shown. Now this was overall designed to question Johnny's integrity and his character, I believe, but mostly it didn't really work since Richard wasn't there at all to witness the incident or indeed perform treatment as what was done by Dr. Kipper. And Camille very much pointed this out during the cross-examination. She came up very strong in her questioning. Once again, she confirmed that because Richard didn't examine Johnny's finger and was just basing his analysis on Johnny's description of the vodka bottle, there was no way that we could really invest too much in his overall analysis. So for me, this wasn't much of a substantial witness. Now the next witness was probably one of the worst witnesses in terms of Amber's team, and this was David Spiegel, who was a psychiatrist and overall was quite the oddball character. Now, as with many witnesses, he started off giving a lengthy monologue about his overall career achievements and qualifications, and there were very comical moments that have got clipped all over social media regarding this witness. Many of these moments included a previous deposition that they played within the trial where he referred to Johnny as an idiot. There was another moment where he asked whether Marlon Brando was still alive or not, which had Johnny facepalming, and as we all know, Marlon Brando passed many years ago. And he also clarified that Johnny's behaviour was in connection with someone who was indeed a substance abuser and somebody who was also capable of domestic violence. He made reference to the fact that because Johnny needed lines fed to him because of his substance abuse, this raised questions over his mental health. And he also made claims that Johnny showed many elements of narcissism throughout his jealousy over Amber. Now the major problem with this testimony is that it was all theoretical. Dr. Spiegel had never treated Johnny, he was just going over the various evidence that was presented in front of him. And for the most part, his testimony felt like it was much more of a seminar on mental health and behaviour rather than giving any factual evidence. He was just going over again Johnny's alcohol and substance abuse, which we already knew throughout this trial, so again there was nothing of real true value in terms of his overall testimony. Just again providing a lot of odd moments and comical moments for the jury and viewers of the trial. We then go on to the final and probably most substantial witness of the day, and that was from Kathryn Arnold, who was an entertainment industry consultant. Now her testimony was to outline Amber's potential career earnings and the upward trajectory that she would have been on following her role within Aquaman. Now as we all know, Aquaman was the most successful of the DC cinematic movies, grossing over $1 billion at the box office. And this testimony was in many ways relating to Amber's counterclaim, is that she lost damages from the overall statements made by both Johnny and also his lawyer regarding her allegations, stating that they were defamatory and cost her potential earnings. Kathryn Arnold stated that following the success of Aquaman, that Amber was on potentially a meteoric rise in terms of her career. She stated that her opportunities dried up following the statements made by Waldron, and she also stated that Amber's earnings would have increased significantly, and she compared the trajectory of Amber's career to that of Jason Momoa, whose salary went up significantly from the first Aquaman movie where he was paid $4 million to the second movie where he was paid around $15 million. She brought into comparison other actresses within the industry, such as Zendaya, who starred in the Marvel Spider-Man films, and also Ana de Armas, who starred in the likes of No Time to Die, the James Bond installment, and also Blade Runner 2049. To be fair, in terms of theory, what she's stating is correct, that any actor or actress who stars in a majorly successful superhero movie, it does increase their profile, it gets them more attention, and it does open the opportunity to gain more roles. But it doesn't necessarily guarantee future success. There are plenty of examples of actors or actresses who have starred in big superhero movies but have not gone on to have prominent movie careers. So for the most part, Kathryn's testimony was largely speculative. But there was criticism on Depp's legal team, and I felt the lawyer, Danielson, spent far too long with this particular witness. He was very slow himself in terms of getting to his overall questions, and he spent too long arguing with Kathryn in terms of how the industry works, and giving over several examples of movies and actors who had not gone on to have significant careers after starring in superhero movies. So initially I felt that Danielson was fumbling the ball for Depp's team, but actually when we look at it now, I do believe that this was much more of a deliberate strategy to drag up the testimony, to make Amber's team use up far more time, as they were already limited in terms of the court time that they had left over. And they dragged this out knowing that Elaine would come back trying to cover any questions or statements that were made by Kathryn when she was under questioning. And whether it was done by deliberation or not, this turned out to be very advantageous for Johnny's team, as it was concluded at the end of today that Amber's team only had 4 hours left in terms of court time. We then go on to Tuesday the 24th of May, and we started off the day with Depp's team putting forward the motion to strike in terms of the counterclaim made by Amber. Now, to be honest, I think this was again deliberate to make Amber's team use up more time and also get them increasingly worried about how the trial was going. As many legal experts have stated, it is very rare for a case to be struck at this particular stage or at any particular stage, and this is what happened when the judge overruled this notion to strike, and we continued on with the trial. Now, the next big development was that Amber's team had rested their defense because they only had 4 hours left. So because they had gone to rest, we then went to the rebuttal claims made by Johnny Depp's team. So to confirm, the rebuttal is when they can go back over previous statements made by Amber's witnesses and use further witnesses themselves to counteract or dismantle any of the statements made by Amber's witnesses. And they started off very strong out the gates when the first witness that they called was Walter Hamada, who we all know is a WB executive, particularly in charge of the DC segment of their movies, and his testimony was via video deposition. And during this deposition, Hamada confirms that Amber wasn't released from her contract for Aquaman 2, that they decided not to extend her contract beyond the sequel. They also confirmed that she didn't receive a pay increase for her role, unlike Jason Momoa, as I explained before. The other big revelation throughout his testimony is that he stated that there were further discussions between him and other Warner Brothers executives regarding the lack of chemistry between both Jason Momoa and Amber Heard, and that the lack of chemistry drew further concerns over her casting. Now, I do have to say that I slightly disagreed with this, having watched the movie. I have to be fair and say that I thought Amber performed quite well as Mira throughout the role, that she actually had very good chemistry with Jason Momoa, but obviously Warner Brothers and Hamada didn't feel the same. And the big statement was that Hamada confirmed that the lack of increase in Amber's pay or the lack of increase in her participation had in no way, shape or form anything to do with the statements made by either Johnny or Waldron in terms of the allegations made by Amber. So this testimony completely cut the legs of what Kathryn Arnold said in a previous day, and of course, because Walter Hamada is an actual Warner Brothers executive, there was no reason to doubt his overall testimony. So this was a major win for Johnny Depp's team and a major blow for Amber Heard's team. The next significant witness was the return of Richard Edward Marx, who was the entertainment negotiator that we saw from early weeks within the trial, and he was asked to return to the trial to very much refute the claims made by Kathryn Arnold, where he severely disagreed that Amber's career would have had an upward trajectory following the success of Aquaman, and the reason for this is that he stated that Amber wasn't as established an actress as the other examples that were used in Kathryn's testimony. So I felt this was a really good testimony, very informative, and once again confirming that Amber's career couldn't be compared to other established actors. We then had the return of Douglas Bania, who was a social media analyst, and he returned showing various statistics regarding the social media tweets and the negative hashtags surrounding Amber. So his role was to compare the negative reception around Amber around the time that the statements were made by Johnny and Waldron. And from his findings, which he demonstrated by showing certain charts, he determined that the negative hashtags had numerous spikes, had no connection at all to the statements made by Waldron. Now Amber's team did come back and spend a good amount of time analysing his statistics, but again they wasted their time because at this stage it wasn't overall significant in terms of the overall perception of the trial. We then had a surprise witness enter the fray, and that was Morgan Knight, and he was the owner of the Hicksville trailer park, and he testified as to what happened when the couple, both Johnny and Amber, visited there way back in 2013. Now there was some debate as to whether this witness would be allowed to make their testimony, and prior to him giving his statements, the judge had to go over exactly how much did he see of the trial itself in terms of social media, as that's not permitted when participating in this trial. But after these questions, he was deemed suitable enough to make his testimony. And during his testimony, he confirmed that Amber was acting very aggressively and very crazy, and he also confirmed that he didn't see any abuse from Johnny regarding Amber. We had some hilarious moments when Elaine cross-examined him, and she mentioned the fact that Morgan was working in tandem with the YouTuber known as the Umbrella Guy, who Elaine deemed to be a very prominent member of Johnny Depp in terms of his tweets about him. And once again, this raised a lot of laughs from the jury and also the viewers as well, because we all know Umbrella Guy is one of the most prominent YouTubers who covers a lot of this trial. Now the next witness we had come up was Dr. Shaw, and he was a psychiatric expert, and he was brought in to dismantle the testimony from Dr. Spiegel, stating that his advice was unreliable since he hadn't actually treated Johnny himself. We then move on to Wednesday, which was without question one of the most incident-packed. We started off with the much anticipated testimony of Kate Moss, who we all know had a major relationship with Johnny way back in 1994 to 1998. She of course was an established supermodel, and the reason for her testimony was because in the previous week, Amber, during her testimony, had mentioned her name when talking about a previous argument or a previous incident between Johnny and Kate on the staircase. This was very notorious at the time because it was initially agreed that there would be no references made, but because Amber had mentioned Kate Moss, it then opened the door to allow Johnny Depp's team to bring Kate in. And when Kate made her testimony, she basically confirmed that during their time spent in Jamaica involved in the incident, that she was walking down the stairs and that she initially slipped and hurt herself. She confirms that in no way did Johnny push her or shove her, and also that there were never any incidents where Johnny had physically abused her. So this was very quick and swift, and once again it really hurt Amber's case more because it gave the suggestion that perhaps Amber was fabricating or making stuff up. It probably wasn't as sensational as many probably thought it would be, but I think overall it presented Johnny once again in a good light, showing that he was not an abusive person in terms of the partners he was involved with. We then go on to the next testimony, and that was the very welcomed return of Dr. Shannon Curry, who previously made a testimony regarding the psychiatric assessment of Amber, where previously she confirmed that Amber didn't suffer any elements of PTSD, and that she felt there was at least a 98% exaggeration on Amber regarding her stress disorder. Now Shannon was brought in this time to refute the testimony made by Diane Hughes, who was another psychiatric expert who talked about the various amounts of abuse that have suffered by women when they are involved with their relationships with men. Now Shannon went into very extensive detail about psychological examination and the assessment of PTSD. Again, she showed an absolute poise and confidence and stature in terms of her overall knowledge. Unlike Diane Hughes, she didn't need to refer to any notes, and she was more than comfortable in talking to both the lawyers and the jury in explaining her overall assessment. Now to be honest, I felt her testimony probably went on for a bit longer than what it should have done, but again it just convinced the jury far more in terms of her expertise, and at the very least she would always capture your attention and that of the jury because of her demeanour and her professionalism and her very obvious good looks as well. But I think she was also put in there deliberately because they knew that Amber's team would very much come back at Shannon, as they felt that Diane Hughes' testimony was one of the strongest parts of their case, and when they did go on to cross Shannon, it would end up using much more of their time. And that was very much the case again when Amber's lawyer Elaine Wendenhoff crossed Shannon once again, But at the end of the day, this didn't really matter too much because, as I mentioned before, Shannon had come across so confidently that he couldn't really poke holes or have any doubts over her particular expertise. And once again, this just used up more time for Team Amber. We then had a very long extensive break where we had very much of a prolonged discussion amongst the other lawyers, and this was surrounding the elements of the TMZ footage regarding the video of Johnny slamming the kitchen cabinets that we saw earlier on throughout this trial. And this concerned the fact that a former employee of TMZ had come forward in order to give testimony regarding the evidence that was passed over to them. Now, this involved an executive from TMZ coming forward to the trial and asking for the testimony not to be put forward, stating that this was very much against the protection of TMZ regarding evidence. But the judge threw it out, stating that essentially if TMZ had any issues with this former employee, that they would have to take it up with him in a separate issue. So after a lengthy discussion, that was thrown out of the way, and then we moved on to the next testimony, which of course was the most significant because it involved the return of Johnny to the stand. And this time Johnny talked about the Waldron statements that were made and when he first came across them, and also when he first realised that Amber was putting forward the countersuit. He then talked about the Aquaman role and the audition by Amber, stating how he was involved in helping her gain the role. We then went over various photos of the scenes where Amber threw the vodka bottle, and Johnny was highlighting where the bottle was thrown with certain pictures that were shown, and he once again talked about his finger injury. We then showed a text of what Johnny sent to Dr. Kipper, telling him that he was injured, and they went over the process of how long it took from the time that he was injured to the time that he contacted Dr. Kipper in order to get treatment. We went over more photos showing where Johnny was hit by Amber in terms of his eye. He also talked about his relationship with Whitney, who was Amber's sister, and he said for the most part that he got on very well with her and that there were no bad feelings or ill will in terms of his relationship with Whitney. Johnny then talked about the experience that he had when he found out that his former business manager, Joel Mandel, had been embezzling his money, describing Mandel as a very bitter and jealous man. He then go on to spoke about making charity donations, and he was somebody who didn't like the attention, he didn't seek the attention or the publicity when making donations, but he preferred that it came under the name of the likes of Disney or Warner Brothers rather than his own. So once again, this was very much trying to compare his roles when it came to donating charities to that, of course, of Amber, who, as we all know, didn't fulfill her obligation to make the charity donations to the ACLU and a charity hospital. So this was a very good piece of strategic questioning from Johnny's team. And this was one of the strongest statements that would have resonated very much with the jury, because it once again deflates the arguments that Johnny is narcissistic, and this connects again with what we heard at the beginning of this trial when Johnny stated that he doesn't seek the money or the fame of his celebrity lifestyle. Johnny then talked about how he first came to knowledge of knowing of the restraining order that was put on by Amber, and this was around May the 27th, 2016, as he was getting ready to put on a promotional tour for the movie Alice Through the Looking Glass. And he remarked again that when he heard about the restraining order, it very much changed his whole life. And this is when he finished his testimony with one of the most powerful statements of the entire trial, when he talked about how he had the burden of coping with all of these insane and heinous and outlandish allegations for 6 years, and how he wanted to tell the truth, he wanted to tell his story, and how he had coped with this for so long. And it was a moment that very much hit home with all the people watching, and once again I believe provided a very favourable moment in his overall case. We then had a very dramatic moment when a lawyer for TMZ, Charles Tobin, came into the courtroom, wanted to prevent a former employee, Morgan Tremaine, from giving evidence within this trial. Now, Morgan Tremaine was a witness called up by Depp's team as a rebuttal witness, and this centred around the issue back in 2016 where TMZ received information about the restraining order that was put on by Amber, plus also receiving footage of where Johnny was slamming the kitchen cabinets as what we had seen earlier on throughout the trial. Despite the best efforts of Charles Tobin, the judge decided that Morgan could be called up as a witness and was able to give his testimony to the case. We then went back to Johnny returning to the stand under the cross-examination of Ben Rottenborn, and during this stage Rottenborn came out firing, very fast paced in his questioning due to the limited time that they had. He was trying to rush Johnny's answers, and once again we had the very compelling back and forth between both Johnny and Rottenborn, Johnny making various quips and quick comments, as Rottenborn was trying to cut him off with his answering. I found this to be very compelling and tense, and really it's been one of the special highlights throughout the entire trial itself. Now, we went over several photos, again revolving around Johnny's eye injury. Rottenborn had claimed that Johnny had tried to get Amber fired from Aquaman 2, and he went through the various text messages, and I think Rottenborn was being very mischievous here, stating that Johnny had said a certain statement that was very different as to the ones that we saw within the texts themselves. And during the display of the text messages, many people online had noticed that during the transcript it could clearly be seen that the text messages had incoming in terms of the messages rather than outgoing. So it called into question as to whether these text messages had been manipulated, because of course if Johnny had sent the text messages, they would be outgoing messages and not incoming messages. Rottenborn then brought up the discussions that Johnny had with Warner Brothers regarding the concerns over the negative press between him and Amber, and Johnny replied stating that he felt responsible to make Warner Brothers aware of what was going on in terms of the perception within the press, and he stated that he did this because of his connections within the industry and the fact that it concerned two huge franchises in both Aquaman and also Fantastic Beasts. And that's when Ben Rottenborn's cross of Johnny came to an end. Now, the next witness we had was of course Morgan Tremaine, tying back to the TMZ incident, and he went over the timeline as to when TMZ received the footage of the video, which was back in August the 12th, 2016. He confirms that they received it via email, and he talked about the process of being able to claim ownership of material within 15 minutes if it comes from a direct source. Now, this once again brought up the suspicion that it was Amber who sent TMZ the video footage, because we all know that Amber had recorded the footage of Johnny slamming the kitchen cabinets to begin with. Now, we had a very funny moment during this testimony when Elaine Bredenhoff questioned Morgan Tremaine, and during this line of questioning she stated that the only reason that Morgan had appeared within this trial is that he wanted to gain his 15 minutes of fame. And Morgan quickly replied back and asked Elaine that the only reason that she was working for Amber is that she wanted to claim her 15 minutes of fame. And this elicited a huge reaction from the jury. You could see many people open aghast at the quick line and the quip, and it was a very funny and a quick comeback from Morgan himself. And if you go online, you'll find various memes of this overall incident. And this is when we came to the closing of day 22. We then opened day 23 with various other witnesses in terms of the rebuttal for Amber Heard, and most notably this saw the return of Diane Hughes, if you remember, was a psychiatrist who assessed Amber Heard, and she returned to the stand to rebut the claims made by Shannon when she reviewed her overall evaluation of Amber. And whilst this was a lengthy segment of the trial, I really don't think that it had any lasting resonance, because as I mentioned already, I think the jury were very much convinced by the overall confidence and poise of Shannon. And then we came to it at last, the biggest highlight of this day, and without question one of the biggest highlights of the entire trial. And this is when Amber returned to the stand, and this was for the rebuttal of the counterclaims involving the statements made by both Johnny and his lawyer Adam Waldron. And when Amber came to the stand, straight away she came in all dramatic, supposedly tearful. We had all of the theatrics and histrionics that we saw during her first time on the stand. She had a very prolonged spiel about talking about all of the abuse that she had suffered in terms of insults and death threats. She stated that at many times Johnny had threatened her and her career. She said that she wasn't laughing or making snide little jokes during the trial, even though we've seen multiple clips of her certainly smirking during Johnny's time on the stand. Now, during this time, Camille was being very sharp, objecting to all of Amber's answers, stating that they were either non-responsive or out of scope. And then we came to the most compelling part of the day, and again one of the most spectacular moments of this trial, and this was the cross-examination once again by Camille of Amber Heard. And the back and forth between both of them was absolutely compelling and full of intensity and tension. Camille questioned Amber over the 2016 allegations when they were first brought to light and her overall appearance. She related this, of course, to the testimony given by Morgan Tremaine of TMZ and how they were notified of when Amber was going to appear out of the courthouse. If you remember, of course, Amber walked out of the courthouse with a bruise on her right cheek, and this very much gave the suggestion that all of this was manufactured in order to show Amber as an abuse victim. Camille yet again brought up the instances of how TMZ knew to disperse the paparazzi at the courthouse at the right time. She once again mentioned the video footage, and again the fact that it must have come from a direct source in order for TMZ to upload it in 15 minutes. And since Amber captured the footage, that she must have been the direct source. She went over several photos that Amber had presented showing her alleged abuse at the hands of Johnny, and one of the instances that stood out the most was the photos that showed Amber walking out of the courthouse where she had a big bruise on her cheek, and then later on a photo was taken literally 2 days later where Amber was walking on the streets with her best friends, and when you look at these photos you can clearly see that there was no bruise on her cheek. Now Amber responded by stating that she used various amounts of makeup to cover this bruise, but when you look at the bruise on the courthouse, it's very hard to be convinced that a makeup could cover a bruise that severe. In response to Camille, Amber stated that she had no knowledge of Morgan Knight during their visit of the Hicksville trailer, and during this tough line of questioning, Amber, at least on 2 occasions, admitted to writing the op-ed article. Now, if the jury had picked up on that, that would be very significant, because all throughout this trial, Amber has claimed that she had no knowledge or influence over the content of the op-ed article, despite the fact that in previous evidence we've seen her tweeting that she indeed published the op-ed article. We then noted the final closing of Camille's questioning when she seemed to be very intense, and at this stage she asked the final question and then seemed to just seemingly walk off the stand without giving Amber a chance to finish off her questioning. So once again, it really showed Camille in such a shining example of a lawyer who was able to provide clear and concise questioning, and also again elicited a lot of high support from viewers watching online. And Camille Vasquez, without question, has been one of the most standout individuals of this entire trial. And that's it really in terms of the overall witness testimonies as we came to the close of this overall day. So despite a very prolonged start on day 20, we ended up having a very action-packed and exciting and immensely compelling finish to this overall trial. Now we did have an additional day to this trial, Friday the 27th of May 2022, and this concerned the closing statements made by both Amber and Johnny's team, but I'll probably expand on that on another video. And to be honest, all of those statements just involved going over the previous exhibits of evidence that we'd seen throughout this trial, and once these statements were made, the case was then put over to the jury to start their deliberation process, and that's where we currently stand right now in terms of waiting the overall verdict. So once again, a very exciting day, and overall I would say at this stage, I would say it's very favourable for Johnny in terms of public perception and public opinion. I'm absolutely certain that Amber has no case involving her counterclaims, but at the same time it's still going to be difficult for Johnny to prove 100% that the op-ed article was indeed defamatory. We will wait and see overall in terms of the overall verdict. And as usual, when my coverage of this trial, if we have any further headlines regarding when the verdict comes into play, I will of course provide further commentary on that as well. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings and review of week 6 of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who do you think is on the winning side at the moment? And whoever wins or loses, what do you think their next action should be going forward once we hear the overall verdict? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.